Today's episode of Palmetto Primetime is proudly sponsored by the Ford and Ford Group. The Ford and Ford Group is here to help you with all of your nonprofit, legislative, and campaign needs. For more information, visit www.fordandfordgroup.com.
Welcome to Palmetto Primetime with Sarah A. Ford and Mandy Powers-Norell, where every week they will be talking about social justice issues. And now, here's Sarah and Mandy.
Y'all, I'm so excited. So many of us feel like we're best friends with our next guest. I know I do because of her hilarious social media presence, her incredible writing, obviously, and reporting. And she's one half of the Murdoch Murders podcast, as well as part of the equally brilliant Cup of Justice. Y'all, it is truly an honor to welcome Liz Farrell to Palmetto Primetime. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited. I was so excited to see that you guys started doing this, and I've been following along, and thank you very much for inviting me.
You have been so kind.
Yeah. I should
So
warn you,
kind,
I have
so
a dog
gracious.
here that is very loud, and he is decided to wake up and drink some water. So that's what you're hearing. And he's probably going to be snoring soon. So I have no control over him. He is my boss. So I just do what I'm told.
All good. I just had a dog that literally ripped a pillow. The very pillows I told you, Mandy, I was like, get these pillows. These are the pillows that will save your life. It's still on my bed, like all open.
No.
And I was just like, we're going to deal with this, Lex. We're going to deal with this later, Lex. See, I can't even talk because I'm like thinking about it. But, you know, it's dogs. We love dogs. So
Really?
we're here for
And
the snores.
We love a dog cameo.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah? Okay, well, there will be
Yeah.
one. I'm not going to encourage it, but there's going to be one.
It might be.
At some point. Yeah, I can feel him looking at me right now.
What are you doing, Mom? Tell us. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So I have to tell you, Liz, when we were preparing for this, number one, when you said yes, we were all like, oh my God, Liz Farrell said that she's
No
going to talk to
brainer,
us.
yeah.
And I sent a text to Zeke. I was like, oh my gosh, such and such. Like, I want to make sure that we talk about this. And the first thing Zeke, who is our producer, said, first of all, Liz Farrell will be judging you because you have 9% on your phone. And I was like, oh my God, you're so right. I need to do better for Liz. But also, that's how much we think like we're friends with you already. So.
It's still, it's not even something that that's what I have pinned to the top of my Twitter account, but for a long time now. But that is really, truly, it's like when people say they have hobbies, I got like super jealous. Like Mandy, when you go dancing and like, cleaning up Corningware. I wish I had something like that, but I think my hobby has turned out to just be like being super judgmental about people's battery levels on their phone when they send me, because it stresses me out. I'm just like, oh my God, plug in your phone or it's going to die. And what do you do then?
Oh my God. Well, I bet you got super stressed out hearing the testimony about Paul having 4% during the trial.
I sure did, especially
I would
knowing how
put my
it
phone
ended.
down.
Yeah. But I have so many friends that do that they just wear out their phone, and I'm just not like that. And you get to 0.5%, or like when it's 50%, that's when I plug it back in.
So you're going to get gas, like when it's like half tank, you're going to get gas. Is that you, Liz?
No, actually, that's so funny. No, I have a friend who
Does
does
not
that.
translate.
Yeah, and there have been times when I've been driving back and I'm so lazy that I don't want to get out of the car that I'll be like, well, I think that it's 12 miles and this says that I have 13 left. Should be fine. So yeah, I don't know. I'm tempting fate.
You just got to take a risk sometimes. And sometimes it's like, okay, we've got this. We got this.
So now I recently saw a tweet that you had posted about like getting outside of your comfort zone and posting more, about your life and about just, just pictures in general. What are you comfortable telling us? Like, what prompted that? What made you think like, let me get?
I think it's just, you get older and you think that somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder and be like, hey, I noticed that you're really good at writing. Would you like this book deal? How about this? And that's just not how it works, or at least it's not how it's worked for me. And I think that I think it just came to a point where I just have to accept that like self-promotion feels really gross to me, and just feels very like talking about myself feels really gross to me. And it's always been about other people, especially as a reporter, because and you know this is as being a victim's advocate too, like it's you're filtering so many emotions and so many things that are happening to other people that you don't really have that energy left for yourself. So it almost feels like a selfish act, and I know it's not. So it took some thinking, it took some persuading by my friend Heather Bragg, who has been helping me with everything in life as it relates especially to the social media push. It's just, I have to be more comfortable, and the snoring has begun, by the way. So you're gonna
I hear it.
Not a 300-pound man. It's literally, he wrapped himself up in a blanket like a burrito, and then he falls asleep.
Oh, just living his best life. I love that.
Yeah, right. And so I look at my phone, I just see it's all photos of my dog.
Oh, as a former politician, I get that, like, self-promotion was like the hardest part because it does feel gross. But I think that also comes with like being a woman. And one thing that you and Mandy do that I appreciate so much is like you lift up other women, and y'all are such encouragers, and you sort of build this sisterhood in a way that I've only discovered like during the last like several years of life, and discovered so many women like y'all who do that and lift up other women. And so like, so let me use that to encourage you in your self-promotion, because you deserve that recognition. And
well, it's so funny because I think with the Murdoch Murders podcast and just the attention I think that's come with it, it's I'm so sorry, guys. It's with the snoring, but it's funny that you say that, because I was talking to somebody last night, a source who, she was talking to somebody else who I guess, is in these circles. And that person told her, don't trust Liz and Mandy. And that really stung, because I was like, well, what have we done that isn't trustworthy, in the sense that like, we weren't in the courtroom every day just trying to get our cameo. We weren't, we weren't taking selfies outside the court every day. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but largely both of us have stayed away from that spotlight as much as possible, just because it takes away from the work we're doing, in the sense of like literally takes away time from the work we're doing. So I think thank you for saying that, because it just, that I get too discouraged, I think, when people judge me for speaking out or for talking about myself, or because that's the trigger point right there. I'm like, oh, nope, you're right. I should get off the stage. I'll be in the audience there. So I think, thank you.
But people always have something to say. I mean, it doesn't matter if we're curing cancer here, or we're, breaking this huge story that you have worked on for years, or, working with whatever it is, good or bad, people always have something to say.
Isn't that hard? It's hard because you guys notice it on social media, I think, too, for you guys, because you guys were speaking out a lot during the trial and making sense of things for people. And it wasn't always received the way it should have been, which is, thank you for sharing that. There are people that are motivated to, I think, enter the chat in a way that's just negative and takes away from the fun for everyone. But I think I reached a point, and it wasn't until this trial, when I was like furiously typing a response, because being misunderstood is huge for me. And it's, writers want to be understood. You want to communicate clearly, like, oh, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant. Mm-hmm. So I was furiously just like, oh, no, you have it wrong. It's not who I am. Here's what I am. And then I looked at the person's followers and I was like, 300. Okay. Maybe I just don't. Maybe I don't invest that time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's done. I have a new policy. It's just, as hard as it is, you just want to defend yourself. I want to defend Mandy. I want to defend my friends and tell people. I'm good at telling people off. So that's the other thing. Like, I want to really
you are so
show
good
off my skills.
Oh my gosh, you're so good at that.
You are like the queen of like snark in the right, like pointed way. Or I'm like,
thank you.
And that is so perfect. I mean, what you say is like what I think of the day after I've been in a situation, and then I'm like in the shower talking to these people and replaying the conversation. I'm like, I got it. I know what I want to say.
I'm ready for
it's
you.
Like, you know it immediately. And
well, so, funny. In college, I remember being like at a bar, and I had just dyed my hair black for some unknown reason. And I'm super pale. I didn't think it out. We didn't have the internet in the same way, like look up and be like, is this going to work for me? So I remember this drunk guy who was he's a real jerk. He was like on the outskirts of our friend group, and he looked up, like he was just totally drunk. And he said, "You look like Marilyn Manson." And I said, "You look like Dan Quayle." And the whole bar, like everyone just started laughing. And I was like, wow, like, that took away the pain of being called Marilyn Manson in the moment. But at the same time, like, it was such a specific reference, and obvious, it was true. He did look like Dan Quayle. And later I talked to that guy, probably a year after that. And he remembered me saying that, even though he was so drunk, and he was like, "That was kind of mean." And I was like,
right? Where'd it go? What prompted that?
Right. Yeah, so I just learned that, I have that skill, and I like to use it, and I have to refrain from using it just because where do you stop,
That's so true. I call it my alter ego is bitchy but bubbly.
Yeah.
Like it's like I prefer to be the bubbly part, but don't make me go there. That's just
Right.
Well, speaking of college, did you grew up in Boston, which I adore Boston. Boston's
Me
amazing.
too.
Did you always think I'm going to just grow up and be a kick-ass journalist? Like, was this your life plan?
No, I wanted to go in the FBI. So all through high school and through college, that was my sole focus. Was I read everything you could read about the FBI. I would sit in the library and look up, career paths and how to get the career you want. And I thought I had I don't really know how to explain why I didn't go into the FBI. It was literally just a decision after talking to my father, and it just junior year of college, I just decided like that isn't the path for me. And I kept getting encouraged. I actually have a story. So a friend of mine who was a journalist, he's not in journalism now, but he has a similar story. And I think even Mandy might. But sophomore year in high school, I was in this British literature class, and I was terrible. It was an honors class, and I was just not deserving of the role. And junior year, I had a literary journalism class and suddenly learned how to write. So senior year, I had the same teacher from that Brit Lit class, and she accused me of plagiarism because she read the story or the essay that I had written, and she said, "This doesn't sound like you." And so she brought me into a room, and I was sobbing because I don't like to be accused of things I didn't do, especially. And I was just like, "Please talk to Mr. Yesner." Just please talk to him because I can write. It happened for me. I can finally do it. So that I knew that writing was a part because Mr. Yesner was so encouraging, and he told me that I should be submitting these to magazines, and it just seemed so just not for, I don't know, it just seemed like something for other people, not for me. So I always knew in the back of my mind that writing was sort of another thing that I had. So that's how it happened.
Oh, you're such a beautiful writer. I mean, you really are. Your writing is like, damn. I mean, it's just so, so good. So I'm glad that you're not in the FBI, but you kind of are with you're an investigative journalist.
I know, but the better version of it, because when you look at what you do in the FBI, no disrespect to anyone in the FBI, but it is tedious. It isn't exciting in the way that being, I think, an investigative journalist can be. It's it's a whole different, very analytical and very, they drill right down to the decimal point on things. So it's just different. But yeah, that's definitely, but I'm also, it's funny to think of myself as an investigative journalist sometimes because I spent so long as a columnist, it just opinions, so I always forget when people are like, "Oh, you sound so biased." And I'm like, well, I am. That's, of course I am. So I forget that there's that aspect that like, just, it comes naturally. Just wanting, I don't like when people tell me something is A when very clearly it's B. So I'm going to set out to prove that it's B. And that just, before I've even thought about it.
And one thing that I love about your style is that you admit that you have opinions, and
Yeah.
there are so many, and you push back against the sort of the notion that so many journalists have of, I come to this as a blank slate, I have no opinions one way or the other. And I've seen, some kind of push back and say, well, you come to it with a bias, where, as I see it, you come to it acknowledging the obvious, that everyone has opinions. And can you say a
Everyone.
few words about that?
Yeah. Well, one, I think as a woman, I do think, that we're not supposed to, our opinions sound tinnier to people's ears than maybe a man's opinion would. But I also think that what I've learned, and I think what Mandy and I would talk about a lot, is just how people say that we're biased, and we are. Admittedly, that's called transparency. You're saying what you think, and that way people can decide for themselves whether they trust you as a source of news, a source of information. But a lot of and this is where we got into trouble, because it's like, I don't want to criticize people in my field, but at the same time, they have to acknowledge that the way they've decided to write a phrase or use a turn of phrase to describe somebody, even as simple as disgraced attorney Alec Murdoch, or there's one, I can't remember who did this, but there was a characterization of the jailhouse calls of Alec as being a father who was looking out for his son and encouraging him to study. And you're like, that's one way to look at it, I suppose. But another way would be that he was also talking about getting back into law school, because this guy, the kid got kicked out of law school, according to the Wall Street Journal. He's helping him. He's reminding him that there are no other chances, because I'm in jail right now, and the school is going to lose its patience. Right. And yeah, so there's a couple of different ways. So when I share my opinion, I feel like I'm just doing it in a way that I want people to understand where I'm coming from and how I see things, because context is so important to understanding the point, right? So we can all talk about like the sled investigation, and they made mistakes here and there, but when you start to add in the context of like, well, here's possibly why, and let's talk about that, it's so important. And I think that when you start adding the context, people see you as biased, because you're saying, well, actually, there's something behind the curtain here. So we're also going to look at the thing behind the curtain, so you can understand the thing that's forward facing.
It's so important, though, to have that perspective and to bring that perspective to the forefront, because, if the sky is blue outside and, someone says it's green, you need to, it's not green, it's blue. Right. And you were away from journalism for a period of time and kind of came back to it. Do you think that kind of became your mission and bringing that forward again?
Maybe the reason, I mean, sometimes I look back and I'm like, wow, I had a pension. I had state health insurance. It was wonderful. I left journalism in so Mandy left the packet in late 2019, early 2020. She started with the other organization. But I left 3 months after that to become the public information officer for Beaufort County. And that was, I remember a source of mine, a very important source in all of this, telling me that not to do it. He said, you don't understand the level of corruption. It's not for you. You're just not going to, you're not going to be happy there. And I was like, well, if the building's on fire, I feel like I should run toward the fire and put the fire out. Along with the county administrator at the time, who was the first woman to be county administrator of Beaufort County. She lasted about just over a year, and I lasted about 4 months because it was so strange and cutthroat in a way that I was not prepared for. But I then went over to the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office, where I was the assistant PIO, the public information officer there, and I loved it. It was really encouraging, and it felt like I don't know, marrying your elementary school boyfriend, because I'm like, I used to love you. I used to love law enforcement. Now I'm back. We can do this. So that was good. But the reason I got back into journalism was because it was too hard for me on the sidelines. I was working with Mandy and others in the industry to help them sort of guide them as to what they should be looking into, and not from things that I was learning at the sheriff's office, because I promise you I was in a dark room there working on their website and putting together public information for them, but from my other sources, from people that I had developed over working 17 years in journalism here. So it was hard. It's hard to feel like you're such an invisible part of this, and then like you just see everybody else is out there like catching the ball, and you're like, well, I want to catch the ball too. I'd like this. I can't do the thing that I want to do and that I'm good at and work for the sheriff's office. So I had to decide, and that's what happened. So it's really just a put me in coach situation, you know. It really was. It's just, yeah. Sometimes it's hard when you're like, I know from writing opinion columns that how you put together the pieces for people will influence how they think about it. So in 2019, when I wrote the column about no cuffs, no mugshot, I forgot what the headline was. That was putting treatment. Yeah, gentleman's treatment. Yeah, that was putting together. That's the kind of writing that I like to do. It's just I felt like when I start my columns, felt like I was taking someone's hand and then gently leading them through the points so that they could see things through the way I'm seeing it. And then as they end, they're understanding. They might not agree, but they're understanding another element of something. So that's, yeah. So it's hard not to be able to do that.
Like when I read your writing, I'm discovering it for myself, but you're helping me to see what I need to see to discover it for myself. It's not heavy-handed. It's guiding and guiding in a way with language that is just absolutely masterful. The one thing, you've worked for other people for a long time. You were working for the sheriff's department when I met you, and that was when Mandy was like, "You've got to meet my best friend. You're gonna love her," and I did. And so, what's it like going from that to working with your best friend and having all this autonomy? And I know, like, you give up your pension, but I'm sure that.
Well, yeah. So it's scary because I'm a person that likes to have stability and know where my money's coming from. So I'm sure most people do. But our working relationship has always been really different and good, like just super solid. Mandy and I both react to news in the same way. We both react to, and we bring different things to the table at the same time. So that was always apparent from the very beginning when I started working with her. Just that we could, it's almost like, I don't know what you call it, like maybe like you're in a canoe or something and you're both making the canoe go. And that's not always the case when you're working with somebody. And that's basically what was the foundation. So that hasn't changed. And then basically, I mean, from 2019 till June 6th, 2021, I mean, the cornerstone of our friendship really was our work. Like we were still working on the Murdoch stuff. I was writing a book, a piece of fiction about based on them, based on the notion of a family of prosecutors who have ruled an area for so long. But it was our everyday.
Are you still working on that?
I changed it. I knew as soon as the murders happened that this was over for me. I just knew that I'm not going to be able to get it written fast enough. I don't have any credentials when it comes to the literary world. And I knew that we were going to get descended upon. So, which we did. And there's I think there's 6 book deals out there. I think there's more maybe. No. So yes and no. So the answer is no. In summer of 2021, I was wearing black and mourning my book and just saying like, poor me, nobody cares about me. But I've resurrected it. I resurrected it a few months ago. And I think maybe another guest of yours and I might be looking at what we can do together. So yeah.
Awesome. Very exciting. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to take a quick break.
Sure.
And then we will come right back.
All right. Sounds good.
When I was in the legislature, I saw firsthand the wonderful work of the Ford and Ford Group. The Ford and Ford Group is a one-stop shop for all of your nonprofit, legislative, and campaign needs. They bring you experienced, passionate, and personalized consulting. Their services will take your work to the next level. Good ideas need a good strategy, hard work, and energy to come to life, and that's what you get when you work with the Ford and Ford Group. They're ready to help make your world a better place to live for all. Your mission is their mission. Get more information at fordandfordgroup.com. That's fordandfordgroup.com.
All right, well, we're coming back with Liz Farrell. You often tell the stories of victims, which is near and dear to my heart as a victims' rights lawyer, because there aren't many people who are willing to do it in a way that is victim-centered and sensitive to their story and giving them autonomy in telling that story.
Mhm.
You know, why is that so important to you? Because you are amazing at it.
Thank you. I would say, so before I was writing these recaps of Southern Charm, the show, and these were like over the top recaps, just not like your usual, like, this is what happened. Like, I was creating an alternate worlds that could have happened. Like, it was almost like a fever dream every time I wrote one. And I was getting a lot of attention for that. There was a lot of, I suddenly had like a national readership with those recaps. But then at the same time, I was covering a murder rape trial. And it was in 2018. I should start with 2016, this cold case got solved in Beaufort County, and it was from 1980. And it was the rape of a 15-year-old girl and the murder of her 18-year-old boyfriend right in front of her. And this woman grew up, stayed in Beaufort, and she was living and working in Beaufort, just a few miles from the guy who it ended up being. So for a year, I shadowed the cold case committee, sort of what went behind the scenes in building this case. I shadowed Hunter Swanson with the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office, who prosecuted the case. I shadowed the families that were involved, and I got to see it was traumatizing, because the fear is real. And I think when we talk about fear, like, we all have those sleepover fears of, like, cracking it on your back, let the yolk run, like the little things that scare us as kids, and the little things but those are all fake things, right? But this is like, wow, like, literally I'm watching an investigator put his body between the defendant coming into the room and the victim so that he does not get to look at her. And you could feel it. And I get really, really emotional about this stuff. But it was like, I sat in this restaurant in Columbia, just like less than a year, I guess it was like August. And I was telling somebody about this story and just like how much it affected my life. And like, I just started crying in the restaurant. So I probably shouldn't talk about it, but it's just, when you know what people go through and you see it so firsthand, and you know that after it's done, after the headlines are done, they're left with nothing sometimes. Like, even though this guy was found guilty and he was sentenced, he's going to be there for the rest of his life. You still have people who now had things come out during a trial, and families interact with each other in now a different, more stressful way. And I just learned that there's people with addiction issues who now are triggered because of that. And so it's just, you sort of just get this whole, when you're covering something like that, and when you're covering anything that has to do with somebody who's lost somebody that they love, particularly in a violent way and unexpected way, it's almost like, I guess I would compare it to like losing a limb. Like, it's, if it's surgically removed, you're not going to have that phantom pain to the extent that you would if it was ripped off in sort of a violent accident. So that's sort of it. It's just this messy. I could not go back to writing recaps after that. I tried, and I was like, all of this is so stupid. Like, it's just so dumb. But yeah, so it was just a feeling of like understanding that victims aren't, first of all, okay, so as a public official, you would have known back in the day when you're in the legislature that you have an accountability to the people who voted you in office. So your life is a little bit different in terms of like the accessibility by the media. We're going to question things that you've done, or decisions you've made, what have you. Victims don't have an obligation to speak to the press. So that's something that I think I've noticed a lot too with the Murdoch stuff. It's just this sort of assumption that, oh, you need to talk, you need to get Maggie and Paul's story out there. You need to, and the things that these people get told, it makes me so just troubled by media and sort of how we behave, because it's in and out, right? But they don't have an obligation to speak. And I think when you remember that, you have to take their lead as much as possible, while also offering them, the opportunity, if they want to put that word out there, but not, it's such a fine line, like encouraging them to tell their story while also respecting the fact that, there's sometimes, so if you're covering a case, I'll just say this, and I know this is a hard thing for reporters, and you develop a relationship with your sources, and they are victims of violent crime, they often have opinions of what happened. So when those opinions don't line up with what law enforcement is finding, and you as a reporter are finding that law enforcement is right, they're on track, this is exactly what happened, that is so hard to watch a victim deal with that, because they think that something's being missed or there's some sort of corruption or something. So you get so involved, you just get super, super attached, and maybe it's not healthy. Maybe 5 years after I've written something, I shouldn't be crying about it still, but
it shows you have a heart. And
Absolutely.
as lawyers, we have to put up these like boundaries in order to be effective for our clients, because if we care too much, if we get too involved, then we're not effective. And but at the same time, you never want to get to a place where you don't care at all, because then you're also not effective. And I've seen way too many lawyers who, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of journalists who just have a clinical approach as opposed to an involved and caring approach. It's hard to find that balance.
it really is. I think I'm able to tell a better story, or more accurate story, by having that relationship with people as I'm writing it. But at the same time, it's like, you don't talk to them. I mean, afterward, it's sort of just like, okay, well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your life. There's
Right.
that.
How do you do that, right?
Yeah. So, but in this case, I'll say with the Murdochs, like, that's the thing that is hard. Going back to like the Twitter thing and social media, like, you have these people lobbing these criticisms at you that have no idea what they're talking about, and they'll say things like, you're just an opportunist, or you're just trying to get your 15 minutes, or making this your whole identity, or what have you. And it's like, you have no idea over the past 4 years, the conversations that Mandy and I have had with people, and the desperation, and even during the trial with people who are unknown, I guess, to the rest of the world in terms of their connection in this, but they're so affected by it because they're friends with Maggie, or they're friends with Paul, or there's things there that we become the touchstone, because we have we have those connections with sources in law enforcement and in other facets where we can get information that maybe the victims aren't getting, or their friends, or what have you. So you end up taking that on without really meaning to, and that can be super a lot. So when we're talking about mental health issues, I think publicly, I think that people sort of brush us off like, oh, poor you. But what we're really talking about is that filter, that like when you're trying to affect change while also doing the thing that you're good at, and you're dealing with people who have been through trauma, you can't, it imprints itself on you. And I don't know the answer on how to protect yourself from it.
Vicarious trauma is so real, and it's something that I talk about in working with victims all the time. But it's like, if a victim is in a pool and they get out of the pool and you are dry on the edge of the pool and they come and give you a hug, you're going to be wet from that. You're going to have water on you, even though you weren't in the pool. So I think it's really important to think about that when we're talking about victims, and and for people that work with victims or telling their stories, or law enforcement, it's real, the vicarious trauma that happens, and understanding that victims don't always act the way that we think that they can or they should, or having our expectations on that. And I really admire you for the way that you've handled working with victims, not only in the Murdaugh case but in so many other cases, because you've really given them a voice to take back the narrative that has been stolen from them. And it's so incredibly important, the work that you do, and I appreciate that so much
Yeah, thank you.
as a lawyer for
Same
victims.
here.
That's such a good image, though. The pool thing, that's exactly what it's like. There's just, you weren't in the pool, but now you're wet,
Yeah.
and that's So it's just, how do you put it? Like, I know that I can make the point. I know that I have the ability to put things into words, which doesn't make sense that I just stammered my way through that. But I have the ability to put things into words and then make those connections, and I think affect that change. Just throughout my career,
Yes.
I've been able to see that with my columns, and just knowing that people change their behaviors based on what they think the press is going to write, or what I'm going to write, or what have you. So I'm aware of that, and I'm aware that that's something that I can lend to other people, because they don't have that. They don't necessarily know how the system works. They don't know the difference between law enforcement and prosecutors. They don't know that this is normal or this is abnormal. So there's that. Yeah, it's been it's such a good, writing something that tells somebody else's story in a way that makes them proud of it is one of the best feelings. So that they feel like their voice, it's almost like you're translating for them, Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Tell us about mentors that you've had, people that you look up to. You're such an encourager of others. And so I know that, when people encourage and when they have a positive outlook, they've had that happen for them in the past. And so I'd love to hear you talk about how that's happened for you.
Well, it's funny because I would say my mentor was an editor at the Packet named Janet Smith, who she's not in newspaper anymore, but she was the opinion editor for a large part of the time we worked together, or the editorial page editor rather. So she wrote the editorials for the entire paper, and she had I think she and I just saw things the same way. And so I used to go into her office. I don't know that she knew she was my mentor, but I loved hearing her on the phone. She didn't take garbage from people. She stood up, and she would get teary-eyed too. I just want to put that out there. So she could get emotional too, at least when she was, super passionate about something. And that was another thing, because they tell you not to cry in the workplace, but I certainly have broken that rule a lot. I'm a crier. I don't know why, but
Tears can be a superpower. It's okay.
Maybe so. Yeah. I mean, I wish I could cry at the appropriate times. So that's one thing, but yeah, so I think that for me, I think I just always wanted to have time for people, especially newcomers to journalism. And I remember I got this letter from a reporter of mine after she had left, and it's one of the best things I've ever read. And she reminded me that I took her aside before her first assignment, and I told her everyone in the room don't know what they're doing, and they are all uncomfortable, and it's going to feel terrible for you, but just know that you're not the only person who's feeling this right now, and just focus on the questions you want to ask this person who is a jerk or a bully, or that was the kind of encouragement that I would give to people, because I just made it up as I went along, because I always felt so, even though Janet was my mentor, she had a confidence that I accidentally had. I don't think I built it. I just, I don't even know if I was aware that I had it. So I felt like I had to give that to other people. I wish that somebody had given me a roadmap to confidence, to say, this is, and nobody feels right now. Everyone is thinking about themselves. And so I try to pass that on, but I wish there's different mentors for different things. And I wish I had a mentor for that specific thing because it took me a long time to figure out.
I think you're definitely a mentor for so many, young women and men in journalism, and how you've kind of forged your own path with that, and kind of going up against the establishment. Sorry, my dogs are in the background.
That's
You can hear. You know, in what ways have you been affected by the establishment pushing against you, and how have you been able to turn that back against them?
Well, I don't know that I've turned it back against them necessarily. I would say, my 4-month stint at Beaufort County should tell you everything. That was the establishment pushing back against me, and the way I respond. I'll tell you the way I responded to it. I'll just be honest. I went to the sheriff's office, and I got that job, and I was happy in that job. And when the woman who hired me, the first woman county administrator in Beaufort County, they treated her terribly. They treated her like utter garbage. The council were monsters to her. Employees were monsters to her. And there were all sorts of these little backstabbing plans that bothered me so much. So what I did was, even though I was explicitly told to stay out of it, I got my friend Heather Bragg, who does my social media, to create a website within a day. She created this website called letherwork.com. And she was because I couldn't be involved, she fought that battle for me because they were firing Ashley, the county administrator, without giving her pay, without giving her the salary, like ending her mid-contract. And she deserved that pay. And because she had what was basically a garbage contract, because you see these men come in to these county positions and they've got these amazing contracts with just, if you fire me, this is what you have to do. And this is, if I take 1 day vacation, you have to give me 6, Yeah. So Ashley had just a straightforward, she was just so grateful to get the job. Her contract didn't really protect her. So my friend Heather did this. We got people to write in. She created a FOIA list of the county, of things to FOIA from the county, so that the public could do that. And she acted like a right menace, calling into the council meeting to express her thoughts. But letherwork.com was just like, let people work, like let women do their jobs without having to. There just was always drama that didn't need to be there. And I hate to say it in 2020, when this was going on, that we shouldn't have to have those conversations about how people treat women. But again, she was the first woman to be in the county administrator. So that's how I pushed back. So a lot of times I'm behind the scenes on things that really strike me as wrong, and people don't. This is the first time I've ever said that out loud, by the way, that I did that with Heather. So you're welcome, Beaufort County.
I think that's amazing, though, because that is pushing back. And I love how, you and Mandy used it, shining the sunlight on what's going on, that is so powerful that, we don't necessarily have to fight with, bats and fists and weapons, but we can just shine the sunlight and show what's happening. And that's really remarkable how you did that for her, and what you're continuing to do for so many people.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us.
No problem.
We've enjoyed this conversation so much. So now I definitely feel like we're like tight, Liz. Like now I'm like, oh, yep. I'm on 20% right now. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to go put my phone up. Liz is going to be disappointed. I'm like telling on myself.
I'm at 70%.
Okay. Yes, of course you are.
Of course. See,
mine is plugged in.
Different personality.
You win.
The world goes round. Well, thank you, Liz, for joining us. And we hope that you're going to stay on, because we're going to bring somebody else on in just a few minutes and have a little girl chat.
Yes.
We look forward to producing podcasts weekly. And if you have any topic ideas, please feel free to contact us on social media at Palm Primetime on Instagram and Twitter. You can find Palmetto Primetime on any platform you listen to your favorite podcasts. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay connected, and give us a 5-star review if you like what you're hearing. Thanks so much for listening.
And a big thank you to Ford and Ford Group, who made today's episode possible.